If you're a health or a life coach who finds sales really scary and icky and you've got no idea how to approach selling in your coaching business, then stay tuned. Today on the Wholehearted Business Show, we're going to talk all about how you can feel more confident when it comes to sales. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help heart-centered and highly sensitive health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show, we're talking all about how you can become more confident with sales. Now, this is part of a little mini series of episodes of the show talking about topics that I think are really important when it comes to you being able to grow your business going into 2026. And if you are not feeling good about sales, that is a problem that we need to look at, because when you do feel better about sales, when you understand the different ways that sales is going to show up in your coaching business, when you actually understand how to implement sales strategies, all of that stuff, that can be a massive game changer, because a lot of coaches just simply don't do sales. They don't really do sales intentionally, and we need to change this if we want your coaching business to be as successful as it can be. One of the things that I've got, which is going to be so helpful if this is you, if you've done nothing around sales in your coaching business, if you don't really understand how to implement sales strategies. So if that sounds like you definitely need to go and check out my Launch and Sales Fix program. This is one of my favorite courses that I've ever created. It's so good. It really is going to help you understand the different strategies, the different ways that you can show up and sell in your coaching business. The price is going to be going up at the end of this week, so please go and check it out. This is another special offer that I have just available as part of this little mini series of things that I've got going on, that I'm talking about what's going to help you in 2026. So if you feel completely clueless when it comes to sales, if you don't have a sales strategy, if you don't understand kind of passive and active selling, if you don't use urgency and scarcity, if you don't know how to do launches, all of that stuff is covered in the Launch and Sales Fix. And it's only $127 or £97 right now, so please go and check it out, because the price is going to be going up at the end of the week. So go and grab it, because genuinely it's one of my favorite courses that I just don't talk enough about. It's really good, so please go and check that out. And yeah, it will transform the way that you show up for sales in your coaching business. But back on to today, we are talking all about how we get confident with sales in our coaching business, because that is a big part of the parcel. If we don't feel confident selling, we're going to struggle to implement some of the strategies that we do cover in the Launch and Sales Fix. So how do we start and feel more confident in sales? Before we get into exactly how we do that, good reminder about why, especially as highly sensitive and heart-centered coaches, we can find sales difficult, because ultimately a lot of us have had uncomfortable experiences, pressured experiences around sales. So really understanding, like, what is it about sales that makes you go, oh, inside? And I think it's just that kind of visceral reaction for a lot of people. It's like, oh, we don't want to do it. It feels like uncomfortable and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't have to, again, what we're hopefully going to cover for you today is how you can feel so much better about selling. So really thinking about, what is it about sales that gives you the ick is a really great starting point. And again, just recognizing that as someone who is highly sensitive and heart-centered, I think we're more sensitive to potential rejection, which often is what can happen with sales. When you're selling, not everyone's going to say yes. So potential rejection, I think we've got a heightened sense of that. We also are often very sensitive to not putting people in difficult positions. And I think when we've had sales done to us that has been uncomfortable for us, that's made us feel like our boundaries have been violated, or it just hasn't been a comfortable experience, we can take that into the way that we sell. Now, again, part of understanding why you feel that sales isn't great for you, or you get the ick, is to understand how you can therefore show up and do sales differently. But we're going to dig into that in a second. So there's lots of legitimate reasons why, particularly if you are, highly sensitive, heart-centered, neurodiverse, all of that kind of package of things, that selling can feel uncomfortable. So just recognizing that, I think, is really useful, and really digging into, have you had an experience around sales that has felt deeply uncomfortable? The one that always pops into my mind is that, this is going way back into the 80s, and there was door-to-door salesmen selling encyclopedias. I don't know why this was a thing, but apparently it was a thing. And somehow this guy got into the house and was sitting there doing his sales pitch for these encyclopedias. And I think my dad had to forcibly remove him from the house. It's the story that I've been told. And I think that must sit in my subconscious somewhere as a story that where sales has been awful, because obviously it's been kind of quite violating, and it has been uncomfortable, and all of those things that we think about when we think about the worst examples of sales. And being able to unpack that, I think, is such an important part of actually starting to feel more confident with it, because it allows us to, identify the things that are kind of like sticking in our mind when it comes to why this is not a very comfortable experience. So the first thing that we can do to make sales more comfortable is ultimately thinking about how we would want sales done with us. Now, that can be a difficult question if you don't really sure, but often it's about, being respectful of people, asking for consent before you sell. Actually, like, in all honesty, a lot of like really good sales probably doesn't feel like selling in the traditional sense, and we'll kind of come onto this in a second, but really thinking about, how do you want to show up? What are your values around selling? And really get clear on that. That can help give you a foundation to go move forward with. The next thing that we can do is just get really confident in what it is that we're actually selling. Now, I think this is such a key thing, because a lot of us, again, particularly if we're highly sensitive and heart-centered, especially, and not exclusively, but especially as women as well, we're harder on ourselves. We expect more from ourselves. We suffer more with imposter syndrome, like all of that stuff can compound, and if we don't feel confident in what it is that we are selling, it is going to be very, very difficult to sell it, especially as someone who is highly sensitive and heart-centered, because we can't bullshit people. Like, we can't do the whole like, this is great, when in the back of my mind we're thinking, is it though? Like, did I get the results that I wanted for that client? And so on. So we need to get really, really confident in what it is that we're selling. And obviously this is quite a big thing, because, how do we actually get more confident in what it is that we're selling? Especially as someone who might be a newer coach. So this might be about, doing work with practice clients, getting testimonials and social proof to kind of back up what it is that you say that you're saying, not over promising in your offer, in the way that you describe your offer. All of that stuff can really, really help. But ultimately, like, seeing people get the results is helpful and will make sales easier. Like, for me, the difference in how confident I feel selling what I have now is so much more different to how it was a few years ago, because I'm so much more confident in what it is that I sell. Like, I don't sell anything unless, like, I would 100% back that thing. 110% I would back that thing that I'm selling. Like, I just don't bother now, because there's no point, because I just wouldn't show up and do it. So, finding the ways to get really confident in what it is that you are selling ultimately, and know that it's going to get the people results. And sometimes the worry is that what we can realistically offer someone in an offer is not going to match what their expectations are, or what it is that they want. But I think we've got to be very honest, again, particularly as the people that we are, the highly sensitive people that we are, about what we can help people achieve. And often with coaching, depending on where you are on the coaching to mentoring scale, and I will link to an episode of the show that I've done talking about that your approach might not actually have that much of a tangible end point. So we need to really think about how we're communicating what it is that we can actually achieve with people, but then being confident enough to know that that's going to be enough, for the right client. And again, this is why this is a huge thing, because it can come back into messaging and niche and tweaking things like that too. But what I would say is, if you have been working as a coach for a while and you still don't feel confident in what it is that you actually offer, then that's a bit of a red flag that we need to pick up on and work on, so that you do feel confident, so that you can sell it really confidently. So actually getting confident in what it is that you are selling is key. And then to follow on from what we've just talked about in terms of actually thinking about how we want to sell, we just want to figure out a process, a way of showing up that feels good to us. So what things can you put into your sales processes that feel good to you? Is it about asking for consent on sales calls and saying, is it okay if I tell you a bit about this program and tell you how much it is? And, is it okay if I follow up with you next week on email? Is it okay if I do this? Like, it's fine to ask for consent. That's okay. Think about the ways in which you want to show up in sales. And it's not just about the personal, what I call high touch selling, which is your one-to-one sales. It is also about the launches and the more passive stuff that you might do, whether or not you want to use urgency and scarcity, whether or not you want to only use genuine urgency and scarcity. There's a big difference between manufactured urgency and scarcity and actual urgency and scarcity. You might want to have a conversation with yourself about that and how you feel about that, and just think about how it is that you want to show up basically in your sales processes. What is going to feel good to you? Do you want to cold DM people or not? It's up to you. It's whatever feels good to you. So really think about what that is going to look like for you. And finally, we want to get our energy in the right place. It is really difficult to sell with confidence when you are desperate for the sale. Now, I know this is really difficult. I know it's difficult when you need the money financially, when you need the validation, for your business, to feel like your business is a business. We need the validation. It's very difficult to show up in your sales conversations, especially high touch, sales conversations, in your selling, and not feel like that kind of like desperate grabby energy. But when you can master that healthy detachment from the outcome, your energy shifts and it makes selling so much more comfortable, because the other person on the receiving end, the person being sold to, will not feel that heaviness, that grabbiness from you. So getting your energy in the right place is really, really helpful when it comes to selling more confidently, and thinking about how can you detach from the outcome of this person saying yes. Now, I read this fantastic email. This is from a dating coach called Matthew Hussey, and he put an example in. I think it was Bryan Cranston told the story about how, whenever he's auditioning for parts, he tries not to be too attached to getting the part ultimately. And he kind of thinks of it like finding someone else's wallet. So he thinks, if he found someone else's wallet on the floor, you wouldn't be, you wouldn't think it was yours. You would know that it belonged to someone else, and you would try and give it back to them. You wouldn't consider that thing yours unless it was yours. And he kind of takes that attitude with parts in movies and TV shows. And Matthew in this email was talking about it in terms of dating. So in terms of like kind of going out there and, thinking about not being attached to a certain person and think, well, if they're not mine, then they're not mine, and they'll go on and find the person that they're meant to be with. And my person's out there somewhere as well. And very much the same goes for your clients. It's remembering like, your clients will find you. And there's a big part of this, I think, is about trust and about knowing that there's a bigger picture at play. And I mean, I'm getting a little bit spiritual and a bit woo now, but this is a muscle that you have to work on. And for me, it's taken a long time as well, but to just trust that the right people will come along and find you at the right time. And that for me is a big part of how I detach from outcomes, or being really attached to kind of specific things happening, because when you kind of work that trust muscle, and obviously again, part of that is seeing to believe and having the experiences that reinforce you being able to trust. But it really just helps to have that detachment when it comes to selling. And kind of again, a bit like Bryan Cranston said in that example, is that, it's, think of them as not being yours. And if they're yours, they say yes, and that's brilliant. But rather than having that grabbiness, like that kind of, that really intense desperation, really, because when you show up with that energy, it is not good. And when you show up with the energy of selling and you don't feel comfortable in the way that you're selling, it's not good. Like I've been sold to before from someone who was clearly really not comfortable with the way that they were doing it, and it was awful. So we want to get comfortable with our sales. We want to understand, the ways in which we're showing up in a way that feels good to us. And like I say, I cover all of this stuff in the Launch and Sales Fix, as well as all the strategies and stuff that you need to kind of implement too. So it's really useful to think about all of this stuff so that you can show up in sales just that little bit more confident. Now, again, your pricing can sometimes come into this. You need to feel really good about your pricing. You need to be able to own your price. It might feel a little bit scary, but you really want to be able to own your price. You want to feel detached. You want to be showing up in a way in your sales conversations that feel good to you, and your sales processes that feel really, really good. And that's how you start to become more confident and more comfortable with sales. Big part of it as well, simply practice. We have to be willing to show up and take the risk. There's no reward without the risk. And that's difficult sometimes. And sometimes it feels vulnerable to be showing up, because again, there's that potential of rejection and how that might feel. But ultimately, without the risk of rejection, we're not going to get the reward of potentially booking that client. So we need to be prepared. And, another part of this conversation as well, finally, another thing that we can do to feel comfortable with sales is to tend to our nervous system. Because again, if we're showing up, and again, this is connected to the attachment, but when our nervous system is calm, when we have that trust, when we know who we are, when we're not kind of in that place of desperation, of grabbiness, of when that confident, settled, nervous system is balanced kind of place, then selling feels so much easier. And like I say, in all honesty, the best sales conversations that I've had do not feel like sales. They feel like having a conversation with someone and helping them discover if this is the right thing for them. So you can also reframe how you see sales altogether, actually. Even if the word sales feels icky still, reframe it as just having a conversation with someone. How can you have a conversation? How can you make invitations to have conversations with you about how you can help someone in a way that you know that you can help them? So have that really, calm nervous system, especially before you're having sales conversations. And I'll be totally honest, I had a discovery call with someone last week, and my nervous system was all over the place. I had loads of stuff going on personally. I had other people in the house. It was awful. And I did not do very well in that conversation at all. And it was a really interesting experience, because like that's not how I usually show up and do sales calls. And I did apologize to the lovely coach on the phone. I was like, I don't usually show up this kind of scatty, but my nervous system was absolutely just not grounded at all. And that very, very rarely happens for me now, especially, you know, in my business. Really rarely happens, but it was just that on that day, that's the way that it was. But again, this is part of the process. You're going to have like shitty conversations sometimes that, you know, where you don't show up the way that you want to show up, and you can learn from them. That's the best thing to do, is just to learn from them and think about how you can do things differently. So for me, trying not to have loads of shit going on in my house at the time that I'm trying to have this conversation with someone is going to be really, really important. And it was just the way that it tended to go that day. But I share that example because, you know, like you are going to have sales that don't go to plan. You are going to get rejected. You are going to have people say no. You are also going to have many, many people say yes. You're also going to have, you know, see the numbers ticking into your bank account. You're also going to have all of the good stuff, but you don't get the reward without the risk. You have to have the risk of rejection. You have to have the risk of getting it wrong. You have to get the risk of fucking it up, like all of that stuff to get the reward. And again, going through that process of potentially getting it wrong is where the trust grows, is where the confidence grows, because you're actually putting it into practice. So I really hope that's been helpful in thinking about things that can help you be more confident when it comes to sales. As I said at the start, please do go and check out the Launch and Sales Fix. Genuinely, it is a great program. It's only $127.97. It is going to go up if you really want to get a handle on sales. And like I say, going into 2026, this is going to be something that is becoming more important, because if you are not actively selling, if you are not using sales strategies, you are not going to get as many clients or make as many sales ultimately as you could do, because you're simply not doing those things. So understanding what that needs to look like in your business and actually looking at this stuff and implementing it into your 2026 plan is really, really important as well. So please go and check out that program. It's amazing. It's only going to be offered for this week if you are watching or listening to the show later. This is November 2025, but please do go and check it out even then, because it will still be available. But please go and check it out. It's a fantastic program. It's going to help you in so many ways going into next year. Genuinely, go and check it out. Okay, guys, I really hope that's been helpful. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave me a comment below. Let me know which of these different things you're going to try. How do you feel about sales? Has this helped you think about sales in a different way? Let me know in the comments. If you listen on the podcast, as always, I love to hear from you guys to let me know if you are enjoying the stuff that I'm making on the show. It's really, really helpful for me. Please pop me a DM on Instagram. I'm at wholeheartedlylaura. That would be amazing. I'll be back next week again with another topic that's going to fit into, you know, the things that you need to be thinking about going into 2026 to grow your coaching business. And I will see you then. Take care, everyone. Bye.